Evening Magic fans, welcome to episode 10 of Penny for Your Thoughts podcast. As always, I'm joined by Mikey and fresh from celebrating his birthday, Grant. How you doing, guys? Mikey?
Very well, mate. Thank you. You well, Paul?
Very well, thank you. G, good birthday celebrations?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. 21 again, so getting used to this number now.
21 plus experience, my friend.
Yeah, you've got it.
And also this week, we are joined by our very good friend, Dan Savage, the Assistant Director of Digital Content for the Orlando Magic. Dan, welcome and thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. Always a pleasure.
It's great. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. A lot of food, had a lot going on, but it's just a little different this year, obviously under the circumstances. Thanksgiving, like everything else, changed a little bit. So, we did go see the in-laws outdoors, did it as safely as possible. But other than that, pretty quiet, good food, but itching to get back to normal like everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend, absolutely. Now, can I just, before we go on, for those that don't actually know you, would you mind just giving us a little bit of information and about yourself and what it is you do with the Magic?
Yeah, so I serve as the Director of Digital News for the Orlando Magic. So my role encompasses a wide variety of things, most notably, forward-facing. You'll see me writing articles, appearing on podcasts, helping out occasionally with our radio, PR, other departments as they see, need and fit. And then, I'm in charge with overseeing all the content that appears on orlandomagic.com. So a lot of stuff goes into all that, meeting with a number of different departments, from our video department, from our social department. I'm a little bit of, a jack of all trades, just helping out the organization wherever it needs, whenever it needs.
I think it's also fair to say that you're a diehard basketball fan as well, aren't you, my friend?
Oh, yeah. I mean, prior to joining the Magic, prior to the 2008-2009 season, I worked for NBA.com, covering the entire league for 3 seasons. So basketball has always been, at the root of a passion of mine. If I wasn't working for the NBA, I'd be going to NBA games, still try to take in high school games, college games, whenever possible. If there's a basketball game out there, I'm trying to watch it.
So you're going to be a good man for this, my friend, because we're going deep diving tonight.
I like the deep dives. Those are more my style.
Now, I also think it's fair to say that you pretty much live any basketball fan's dream life, don't you? With the traveling to and from the games, being involved heavily with the team for the website, and also pre-game and match days. There's a lot of involvement with the guys at Fox Sports Florida, isn't there?
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on. One of my favorite things to do prior to, the pandemic hitting is just like prior to the game, what city we're in, whether at Amway Center or on the road, is, kind of sit down with David Steele, Jeff Turner, Dante, Josh Cohen on my team. And, while you're eating, it's just discussing the matchup for the game tonight, the deep dives. What's going to be, is this anything for the night? Just all that basketball talk, what interesting stats I've found, what interesting stats they've found, just kind of cross-referencing and breaking down the opponent, what we've heard, who might be on the injury report, what this guy's got going on. That's the stuff I live and die for. And so to get the opportunity to do that for a living is just amazing.
That has to be a lot of fun, my friend. It has to be a lot of fun.
No, it is.
Now, unfortunately, and before we go any further, we're going to have to talk about the sad passing of Jimmy Hewitt, one of the team's co-founders. Died this weekend, aged 79. I believe it was advanced stages of dementia and also having contracted coronavirus. Now, Grant, as our longest standing Magic fan within the Orlando Magic UK, what did Jimmy mean to you?
Well, he's one of the founding fathers of the organisation. Take it back to 1986, him and Pat Williams set out on a mission to bring a franchise to Orlando. And, he got a few businessmen together, consortium, built the arena. And, was able to manage to convince the NBA with getting 10,000 season ticket plans sold to bring a franchise to Orlando. I believe he was a Central Florida man through and through. Did a lot for the community, and it's thanks to him that we've got a basketball team in Orlando. So I'm sure we're all forever thankful for the team that we have, the jobs that it's created and everything. So no, it's really sad, but a great loss to Central Florida.
Absolutely. Dan, what's been the atmosphere around the team?
Yeah, I mean, it's been tough, especially because we're not all in the offices like we normally would be. A lot of my connection to Jimmy Hewitt, because obviously I came here in 2008, 2009, was through Pat Williams. Pat Williams, when he was in the senior vice president role from the Orlando Magic, we'd spend a lot of times together in the summer. He'd always come into my office, and we'd kind of sit down and just he'd be really interested in who the draft prospects were, who we're going to take. And so a lot of times in the summer it would be going over that stuff. And then during summer leagues, when we used to host it in Orlando, he would sit next to me and he'd be picking my brain on each and every guy. So I always felt a lot of pressure knowing every single player that was participating in the Orlando Summer League, whether it was for the Magic, the then Bobcats, or take it back to the OKC Thunder, because Pat was going to quiz me on the guy. So I was like real deep dive into the Orlando Summer League, and we would also write the articles for NBA.com. We would freelance out and do that as well. So I was covering everything when they had the Orlando Summer League, and then so as part of that relationship with Pat, I had the opportunity to work on a few things for various publications with him. As he told the story with Jimmy Hewitt about how they founded the Magic. So I had a few conversations with Jimmy, both around the time he was inducted into the Magic Hall of Fame in 2017, and for kind of sit-down interview that was used in a book in 2016. And he was just a pleasure of man, so excited of what the Magic had become, and just his part that he played in it. And the two of them together, Pat and Jimmy, they could get on going stories for hours. I don't think I ever actually said a word. I think I just sat there and listened, and both of them talked and told tales. But it was fascinating to listen to that and to have the opportunity to do that. And so it's real sad anytime you lose somebody who's just a key architect and visionary. And both he and Pat had just this immense vision to see things and make them become a reality. And so to lose somebody like that is just sad. You wish he was here for the start of another Magic season, because he'd be so excited about it.
Yeah.
I just want to say you could have picked worse years to start working for the Magic in 2008, 2009.
Yeah, I took a lot of credit for that season when I showed up, because the Magic were having trouble getting over that playoff hump, and then I show up and they make the run to the finals. So that season, anytime I had Otis Smith's ear, I was letting him know about that.
Okay, guys, we're going to move on to happier things. We now know when we're getting Magic basketball back. Pre-season schedule has been announced, and the Magic will play the Hawks in Atlanta on Friday the 11th and Sunday the 13th of December. UK tip times being midnight for the 11th and 10 p.m. for the 13th. And then we move back to the Amway, where we play Charlotte on the 17th and the 19th of December, both tip times for the UK being midnight. Hopefully, and I know that there's no information about this as yet, but hopefully these games will be available to watch here in the UK. Both teams are seen as rivals to us for getting into the postseason. Excuse me. So, Mikey, would you mind breaking down your thoughts on Atlanta for what they've done during the off season and what they've got?
They've had a really good off season, haven't they? Coming off they had a 20-win season last year, 29 the year before that. They were a bit of a problem for us last year, weren't they? Especially the first two games that we dropped. We even the season series at 2-2. But they've accelerated their timeline, haven't they, with the moves that they've made. Trae Young's a star. He averaged, 29 points last season, 9 assists, 4 rebounds. The other thing I didn't realize is he got to the free throw line 9 times a game and shot 36%. it's all about Trae Young in Atlanta, isn't it? And I really like the move of bringing in Rajon Rondo and using him as a bit of a mentor to show him how to win, really, because that's the next step in Trae Young's game. They've made a number of moves. They had the Bogdanovic signed an offer sheet from the Kings rejected the other day. 3-level scorer, and he can take a bit of the pressure off of Trae Young when he's not on the floor. There was a bit of a mess, wasn't there, when everybody thought he was going to the Milwaukee Bucks, and then they said, no, I'm not agreeing to this, and decided to pull the plug on that one. And he ends up in Atlanta. Danilo Gallinari, who's a 38% 3-point scorer for his career. Tony Snell as well. Chris Dunn left Chicago, who started quite a few games last year, and you almost think he could be their third string point guard there. And then they had Clint Capella, who they traded for in February as part of a 4-team deal, who's averaged 13 points and 13 rebounds for his career. They've had a really nice offseason, Atlanta. John Collins, I didn't mention as well. I'd really like John Collins. Averaged 20 and 10 last year, and shot 40% from threes. He's a really nice young player there that complements Trae Young. They're going to be a problem this year, and I actually think they might push Miami. I know that's a bit of might be a bit optimistic with the season that the Heat had, but they look to me probably one of the stronger teams in our division this season. I don't know what you guys think.
Dan, what's your opinion? Because everybody had them Atlanta down as being a team of great threat last season, and really, for me, they fell short of what was expected. What's your opinions on them for this year?
Well, they definitely try to accelerate their timeline because they have a lot of young players with a lot of potential, whether you look at Kevin Huerter or, obviously Trae Young will continue to grow. You have Cam Reddish, John Collins. But then they brought in a number of veteran pieces, and there's going to be a lot of competition for minutes in Atlanta. So it's going to be curious. These accelerations of timelines can turn interesting because you have veteran players who are signing or coming there expecting to win now. And then you also have the younger players who are still trying to find themselves and grow into their role into the league. So it'll be interesting how that comes together, especially in an off season where you don't have nearly as much time to gel, to learn the system, for everybody to define their roles. You're already talking about a truncated preseason, a truncated training camp, truncated off season. So, this could be one of those situations where, especially early in the season, you see teams with continuity doing a little bit better than expected. So Atlanta has a lot of moving parts, but you have to like, from an offensive perspective, what they've done. Bogdanovic is going to be, a huge piece for them. He can play both ways. Gallinari adds, additional shooting for them. And it'll allow Trae Young at times to move away from the ball and find open 3-point shots, which we haven't been able to see him really do effectively in Atlanta because he's really had to carry the load. The bigger question I have from them from a tactical standpoint is how are they going to be defensively? Because if you look at some of the players that they're going to roll out there, they're definitely capable of getting buckets. But, when you come into the crunch time of the season and, defense starts to matter more, will they be able to get the stops necessary while still having the potent offensive players in the lineup that I'm sure that they want to have on the floor? And so that'll be one of the interesting things to watch. But you have to love the aggressiveness and their approach that they took to the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing, Dan, with regards to Atlanta, will COVID mean that you are able to still travel with the team and go to those games, or will you be working from Orlando?
That's a good question, and one we're still trying to figure out. I would imagine, at least for the early part of the season, that I'll probably still be in Orlando, but all of this is subject to change. As I think it's kind of been put on Twitter by, various league executives, the kind of COVID handbook, which is like 140 some odd pages of very well thought and very informative information, was delivered to teams recently. So there's a lot of sifting out internally, figuring all that stuff out. That's why you're still seeing limited information about broadcasts, etc., because teams are going through all that, trying to figure out, okay, how's the best way that we approach this season, get things going, do it in a safe manner, and then maybe scale up from there. So all that's to be determined. Obviously I'd love to continue that aspect. Not being, right there in the room all the time makes it a little tougher to cover the team. And, you miss out on some of those nuggets that you might otherwise gain. But, at the same time, we got to be smart about it. And the highest priority is player safety and getting the season going in a safe manner.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Grant, opinions on Charlotte and their moves this season, this off-season?
Charlotte Hornets. Yeah. Well, Dan and myself have got a good friend who works for the Charlotte Hornets now at the team store, Mr. Lewis Hagerman. So I often catch up with Lewis, and he always talks about the Hornets. He's very happy with their off season. So I'll just quickly recap it. So they finished the season 23-42 last year, coached by former Magic coach James Borrego. So they drafted LaMelo Ball with a third pick, whereas I think they were the 9th worst team. So they gained a little bit in the draft lottery, which assisted them. They drafted 3 other rookies, a chap called Vernon Carey Jr., from Duke, Nick Richards, and Grant, Rilla, not sure. I'm sure Dan's done his scouting on these chaps.
Here and there.
But that Vernon Carey Jr., he's a Duke product. So, you get quality players from that university. So they're a little behind Atlanta, I would say, in that, they're still gaining assets through the draft as opposed to signing free agents to, bolster the talent around them, like what the Hawks have done. They did sign Gordon Hayward to a 4-year, $120 million deal. Granted, Hayward's 30 now, but he'll add, a great locker room presence, the ability to, generate his own offense, get people involved, a great locker room guy. So when you've got, players like Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier, PJ Washington, who are still learning the game, still learning, finding their feet in the NBA, then it's good to have these veterans around them. Another veteran they've got, another one we're familiar with, Bismack Biyombo. I'm sure Dan's got plenty of stories on Biz, quality teammate. And they've got, a bunch of other guys as well, Cody Zeller, Miles Bridges, Malik Monk, Caleb Martin. So if you're looking at the Hornets from an off-season perspective, they've probably done what they needed to do, almost press the reset button, get rid of Batum's contract. They've stretched him, signed a player that could, in Hayward, that can assist the younger guys as they look, to try and challenge for that 8th spot. Lewis thinks he'll get the 8th spot, but I'm not convinced. What do you think, Dan?
Well, I think what Charlotte really needed to do in the wake of Kemba Walker, departing to Boston, was kind of reinvigorate their fan base and generate excitement. And with the moves of getting Hayward and Ball in the draft, they've re-put themselves on the map. And I think that was a very important thing for them to do as a franchise, because I think there was a period of time there where they were, last season where it was just like, what's our identity? What's our future path? And now when you look at Ball, when you look at Hayward, when you look at Graham, you have, a trio of guys that, really can make a difference for a franchise. So I think they're very excited about their offseason in Charlotte. But again, this is going to be a very tough season for a team that's had, as much change as they have. And at the same time, you're going to have 3 guys in Ball, Graham, who last season became very accustomed to being the primary offensive focus, along with Gordon Hayward, who are going to try to find their offensive shots. And while eventually they can all help each other and play make with one another, it's going to take some time. I mean, even when you put players that were as talented as LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, they didn't really hit their stride with the Miami Heat until midway through a normal season. So you talk about three guys you're going to have ball trying to figure out in the NBA, and he's used to being a primary ball guy. You have Hayward, who's coming into this role, and I believe assuming, hey, I'm coming to Charlotte, I'm going to be the man here. And you have Graham, who last season was the man in Charlotte. So they're going to have to figure those things out. I think the good thing about James Borrego, he's a great communicator. He's a guy who will listen to his players. And I think he'll do a good job of sorting that out. But that's a much better problem to have, is having a few, too many guys who could score the ball rather than not enough.
Excellent. I've got to be honest, for myself, I'm not convinced by Charlotte as yet. I think, like you've just said, Dan, there's a huge amount to see how they actually finally gel on the court together before we can make any real assessments of them. I'm not convinced by it. Atlanta, like you said, we've all covered it, that last season they could score, they could shoot the lights out, but when it came to defense, if you could outscore them, you won the game easily, because they just could not defend. They could not defend. So again, I think that's going to be their issue, but we'll see. Now, I'm going to take a little move on from where we were last week on Penny for Your Thoughts by taking a look at the roster and depth chart. The thought of carrying this on was a little bit inspired by a question that we got from one of our followers, Rich, who's just over the water in Dublin. I'm going to come to a specific question later on, but as we look at the squad, I think we all agreed last week that the team had got so many contract decisions to be made and issues to address that the front office could not resolve everything in one off season, even if they took the decision to blow the squad up, which, with the turnaround, as you've already said, Dan, this season would be completely impractical. It's such a short turnaround. So again, we're going to run it back. We go into the season with some continuity. So the first question I want to ask is, and I'll throw this one to you first, G. The training camp roster has been announced. Do you feel that that's where we are for the start of the season, that we aren't going to see any more moves now?
Well, Dan might be able to assist here. We're having a look at the numbers, and we had 20 on the roster, one of which was Jonathan Isaac. So that takes it down to 19 immediately. You've got two guys with two-way contracts in Jordan Bone and Kareem Mane. Is that how you say it? Maine. Okay, sorry. There's a footballer called Mane.
We'll call him Mane.
At least I call him Maine. I mean, that's again, I haven't been introduced to him.
Yeah, and then you've got three other guys: John Tesk, Devin Kennedy, and Robert Franks joined the roster for the training camp. So you add them to the mix, and then other than that, you've got your core 14, I guess, in at centre, Vucevic, Bamba, Birch, power forward, Gordon, Clark, and Aminu. Of course, Isaac's a scratch because of his injury. Small forward, Ennis, Ross, Okiki, two guard, Fournier, Anthony Bacon, and point guard, Fultz and Michael Carter-Williams. So I'm not 100% sure if we've got an open roster spot, but that to me looks pretty set, unless, one of these camp invites does really well, like we saw back in 2012 when Daquan Jones made the roster as our starting two guard. So no, I think that's probably it, but I don't know, Dan might be able to shed some more light on that.
Yeah, no, I was just looking up the pronunciation of Kareem there, and you may be closer to right than I was, to be quite honest. I've watched tape of him, but again, I haven't been introduced to him formally yet. But one of the things I think that he brings to the table is just an explosiveness. He's one of the guys I'm more intrigued about out of the five guys that were announced kind of at one time, just because he comes from Canada, wasn't seen as much. There was some talk, if he would have produced those kind of numbers at a Kentucky or Duke, could have gone much higher in the draft. So I think he's kind of one of those guys that you could look at and say, did we find a diamond in the rough type of situation, where now I think the big question in regards to him is, can he do it against higher competition level? that's something, you know, you don't have to worry about when you look at like a Cole Anthony, because he's played at the highest level of competition at every level. I think one of the things when it comes to Kareem that you're going to have to look at is, you know, he's going to be playing up a notch in talent pool, not only at the NBA level, but even when he's playing at the G League. So I think he's a great guy to take a two-way flyer on. And then you look at another guy like Bone, who, you know, was a second round pick, you know, a few years back. And there was obviously something that NBA teams saw in him. So put him in your system, kick the tires on him, especially in a year where you don't have a second round pick yourself, and develop him within, you know, your G League system and see what you have there. So there's some intriguing guys there. Kareem obviously being the guy who sticks out the most to me individually, and hope to get to see all these guys a little bit more here and learn a little bit about them in terms of Orlando's development for them.
Michael, what's your feelings on the squad? You happy with it?
Yeah, it's the same as G, really. I think it's pretty much set as it is. Dan's already touched on Kareem Mane. I'm going to call him Mane.
Yeah, you might be right.
I won't break out into a Liverpool song. It's cool. And yeah, there's a couple there that might squeeze into the regular season roster, but I think with the shortened off season, I think the front office have taken they've taken the safe option and saying, well, with such a shortened off season, we're going to go with continuity, because you know what you're going to get from this group, and hope to get off to a good start to the season, really. So yeah, I think it's pretty much set.
Yeah, I agree. Dan, I do want to ask you, whilst we're just talking about the roster, what can you tell us about Cole Anthony? Because I know that you were involved in a little bit of the background work in looking at him for the team.
Yeah, no. Well, I sat down with Magic Assistant General Manager Matt Lloyd to do a detailed article, just kind of peeling back the whole process of how does a guy like Cole Anthony, when does he come on the Magic's radar? How does it, you know, a prospect become identified? And then how do they go about scouting him? And then on top of that, you know, ultimately come to the decision to draft him. So with Cole in particular, he's one of those guys that flashed probably about as early as you could as a prospect. One, because he did well and was able to play at an early age in some of these Nike camps and, you know, AAU circuits and USA basketball that are open to NBA GMs and scouts. So by the time, you know, he was in his late teens, he was already identified as a guy. And then as you start performing well in these things, you play at the McDonald's All-American game, etc., they had started to develop a tally on him. And so the one great thing about Cole Anthony is in today's age, there's a lot of like players will try to get identified. And then once they are, they kind of pull back a little bit from doing things because they want to leave a little bit of intrigue, not do anything to hurt their potential draft stock. And Cole Anthony never did that. He is a guy that at every level played against the highest level of competition, did nothing to hide, you know, always wanted to compete at the highest level. And, you know, there's something to be said for that. There's also something to say for the fact that he's not shied away from the fact that he is the son of a former NBA player, Greg Anthony. He's been, you know, willing to talk about that, even wearing, you know, his father's number, you know, coming into the NBA. So he's willing to be, you know, in the pressure cooker, for a lack of a better word. He played at a top-notch high schools, both when he was in New York City and when he transferred down to Virginia at Oak Hill. You know, he was on the cover of Slam magazine, going from his junior year into his senior year. So, you know, he's not a guy who's scared of pressure. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And then when you look at the fact that he was a consensus probably guy coming into college that he would be a top 3 NBA draft pick. And then he dealt with injuries. And you could see in the tape, you watch his first 5 games with North Carolina, and they're considerably different from these games post-injury. So for the Magic at pick 15 to be able to get a guy that comes from that talent pool, there's something, you know, special there. And hopefully he can materialize and be the guy that we saw with the athleticism, the burst of that first 5 games in North Carolina in his high school career, rather than the guy that he was necessarily post-injury. And at number 15, you really can't, ask for anything better than that.
There have been a lot of things written that we may well have got the steal of the draft.
Yeah, I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but there's a lot to like about his game. And, one of the guys that Josh Cohen and I, as we were breaking down, looking at his film, you see some similarities to him and Jamal Murray, where, he doesn't necessarily have to beat somebody, completely off the dribble to get to the rim to finish. He can make difficult shots. And so, for a guy who maybe he's not as big as Jamal Murray, but he's also got some of the willingness to absorb contact and create contact. And he does have an explosive burst to him. So I think he's a guy that if he can prove he can be efficient at the NBA level, he can make tough shots and potentially score at all 3 levels effectively. So I think for him, the early things that he'll have to do to overcome to be successful is just making sure he's efficient at the NBA level and then develop scoring capabilities at all 3 levels.
Cool. Now, I'm going to come to the question that we've got from Rich, one of our followers, as it leads us on nicely into where we're going. And Dan, I'm going to throw this one to you first again, if you don't mind. Don't mind. The question is, what does T. Ross need to do to become a starter?
Well, to me, I hear that question a lot, and to me, starting is not nearly as important for what I would value out of Terrence Ross is if he's a guy finishing the game. We've seen throughout NBA history with guys like Manu Ginobili that, it's not necessarily, being there at the start of the game that's the most important, but being there in the closing moments. And Terrence Ross, throughout his tenure with the Magic, has been in the closing moments of a number of Magic games. I kind of personally like him as a second unit guy. I think he performs better there because what he does so well is he gets himself into an instant rhythm. Prior to being the Human Torch, the nickname that David Steele and them were kicking around a little bit was the microwave, because he was, instantly heated up. So for a guy like that, why not bring him in off the second unit, get into his rhythm right off the bat, knock down some shots, and then in the closing moments, he's a guy you could also rely on. The other value there with being the second unit is he carries that offensive load. He sees a much higher shot volume playing with the second unit than you would necessarily see at the start of the game, when you also have to consider that you have to get guys like Vooch touches. You need Markelle Fultz to get into a rhythm. You need to get Evan Fournier going. And so, and Aaron Gordon. And so you start hitting off these big hitters. I think it's better for his game, better for the Magic's second unit to have a guy that can heat up so quickly, come in and take a higher volume of shots.
Yeah. Mikey, what do you feel as our starting lineup for the season opener then?
I think it's going to be similar to the bubble. Fultz, Fournier. I'm going to say Ennis, Gordon, and Vooch. That's what I would go with. Is Aminu a possibility of starting with AG at the forward positions? I think that might be something to look forward to. But I'd probably put my bet on Ennis at the moment.
G?
Yeah, I'd go exactly the same. Fultz, Fournier, Ennis, Gordon, Vooch. I'd be interested. I mean, we don't know a great deal about Chuma Okeke. He could play the 3, I guess. But we haven't seen him. We don't know what to expect. Some people have said he's a bit like Kawhi Leonard. Again, we don't know, do we? So I guess we just wait and see what Coach Clifford thinks is the best lineup. It's probably, I don't know, maybe too early just to throw him in the deep end, but some players, prosper when they're just thrown in there. Do your thing. You look at Gary Clark last year, superb. He was asked to guard Giannis in the playoffs against the Bucks, and he did an admirable job. And we're happy to have him back. But I can't really see anything of a short of Ennis at the 3, Gordon and Vooch up top.
Yeah. I'm with you both. I know that on ESPN they've got on our depth chart. God almighty, I put my teeth in. They've got Terence Ross starting over Ennis, but I would go with as you two have. I think that's the case. Dan, any opinions? Without giving anything away, we don't expect.
Well, no, in terms of starting lineup, I think you always start training camp kind of the way you finished, and then make guys prove that they deserve bigger roles. So I think at the start of training camp where we are right now, you're going to go into with that starting lineup, and then so much can happen throughout the course of a training camp that can alter that. It's a little bit early to tell, but I would imagine they go into training camp with that mindset, and then you see what other guys do. James Ennis is proven that he's a valuable piece. He's a veteran. He knows the system, and it may be too early for a guy. When you look at the other guys who could potentially fill in for him down the road, like a Chuma Okeke, or another guy who could push his way into a starting lineup somewhere in the future, like a Cole Anthony. It's going to be very hard for rookies to figure out their way to get in the starting lineup. And then you start looking at the veteran pieces in there, like the Michael Carter Williams, the Terrence Ross. I think they provide so much stability that with the second unit and have defined roles there that you'd hate to disrupt that. So I think for the favorite right now out of the gate is the lineup that they kind of, I say close the bubble with, but a lot of those guys were injured at the end of the bubble. So, but that grouping will probably be the favorite to start training camp.
So the reason I went with the starting lineup that I did was because if we are going back into the season with continuity, then you have to, as you've said, Dan, go with the rotations and the kind of understanding that the players have got of their roles and who they work well with. So that was the reason I went with that, I've got to say.
It's a good point. And eventually you have other guys coming back from injury too, like an Al-Farouq Aminu who will try to potentially fight for his role in there, depending on whether you want to play Aaron Gordon at the 3 or the 4, and offers defensive flexibility. But again, I think coming into training camp, especially as some of these guys are trying to come back from injuries, etc., you have to look at that one as kind of the favorite.
Yeah. On that point, Dan, is there any update as to the progress of Mo Bamba with regards to his recovery from clearly the effects of COVID? I think I don't know, it's being called the same in America, but over here, it's being referred to as long COVID.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that's one of the things that we're going to kind of over the next few days, whether it's Al-Farouq Aminu, whether it's Mo Bamba, or whether it's guys like Chuma Okeke, is really start to gain an idea of their progress, how they've come back from injury, and I think Bamba falls into that category. I think the thing we know about the Orlando Magic is that they're going to proceed with caution. Whether, for any of their players, they're going to look out for the best interest and their long-term future. So I think those are things that'll start to come out in the coming days, and we'll see how they go from there.
Okay, cool. On ESPN, I noticed on ESPN they've still got both Al-Farouq Aminu and Chuma Okeke listed as being day-to-day. So it will be interesting to see how they progress through training camp, because it's going to be exciting to see some of these guys coming back. I don't feel we ever got to see the best of Al-Farouq Aminu last season.
Yeah. No, I think he has a lot to offer a team, especially with his defensive versatility. But again, you have to proceed with caution with a guy coming off like injury like that. Obviously we haven't had a full off season. There's different, training protocols and everything along those lines. So, he'll be one of those guys to watch closely over the next few days.
So from there, who do we feel's got the most to prove during this new season? Grant, let's go with you first, mate.
For me, just because his name's been bandied around in all these trade rumors, he's going to Golden State, he's going to Brooklyn. It's Aaron Gordon. Kid's 25. He's been in the league 6 years. Drafted 4th overall. I think he gets a bad rap. He's very good defensively. he does little things that people don't really notice. It's that Brooklyn game last year, key block at the end. He's gone off for 40 points against them. Now, granted, just have a quick look at his numbers. So last year, in 62 games, he averaged 14.4, which was a little backwards on the season before, 16, and the season before that, 17.6. So, maybe defenses are, honing in on a bit more, and, trying to stop him a bit more. But the fact I don't know, he signed an 80 million 4-year deal with us. He was going to be, one of our star men. It probably hasn't happened like we'd wanted it to. And given that Isaac has, gone down for the season, then he's got that opportunity. And we've probably said this last 2-3 seasons, to get the ball a bit more, to score a little bit more. But it just feels sometimes it's gone missing the last couple of seasons. So for me, he's got the most to prove. Quash these trade rumours. He signed with us for another 2 seasons. He's a quality player. Like I said, 25. You get some people coming in drafted, at 25. He's got 6 years experience in the NBA. And if I was to say to you, you could draft a player tomorrow and he was going to average, close on 15 points a game, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, he'd be in the running for Rookie of the Year. Now, granted, he's not a rookie. He's a very solid player, but you just want to see him take the next step. So for me, it's AG.
Okay, cool. Mikey, have you decided?
No, not really. I'm toying between Bamba and Fultz, both for different reasons, really. I'm going to go with Fultz, to be honest, for the most to prove, really. The reason I'm not going for Bamba is because I think because of the whole COVID situation, he's probably going to get the benefit of a doubt and a little bit longer to ease himself back in. But for Fultz, it's year 4. He's coming off. I mean, last year was a prove it season in terms of coming off the injury and showing us that he was healthy and he could be an NBA player. And I think he shocked everybody by starting after 5 games. But it's a contract year. He's due for a contract extension right now. He averaged 12 points, 73% from the free throw line, 26% from the 3 is something we all want to see improve. But that's just going to be reps. He's had a really up and down start to his NBA career. But he's shown us flashes last year, didn't he, of what he could do. I go back to the Lakers game in the Staples Center and how he closed the game for us down the stretch in that one. But it was just great to see him out on the floor last year, being healthy, being able to run the offense and start as early as he did. But I think Fultz is probably the one player at the moment who we probably look at who's got the most potential of becoming that star player. And between year 3 and 4, it's difficult because this offseason would normally be the one where you'd like him to make the biggest jump in his development. But he's not going to get that because of the whole situation. So it's going to be tough for him, but playing games and getting minutes and getting his opportunities, he's got his chance. He's on a team that believes in him. He's with an organization that believes in him. He's shown us what he can do last year. I just think now we just want to see him take his game to that next level this season.
So for you, Mikey, is it that it's Magic fans he's got to prove himself to?
No. I don't think
the naysayers in the league who were saying he's a bust.
I don't think he's got. I wouldn't say it's Magic fans believe in him. I mean, we're all pretty defensive of him, aren't we? When other fans want to jump on him, we're like, no, we're not having any of this. I just think for the franchise moving forward, he's got the opportunity with Isaac out this year to be that lead player this year and become almost the face of the franchise if he can take that jump. And that's what we're lacking. That's what we desperately need, isn't it? That star player. So no, I would probably say it's the rest of the league, but again, it's it's all in Fultz's court. The front office believe in him. It's whether he's that long-term answer at the point guard position, really. And he's got pressure now, hasn't he, with Cole Anthony being drafted, which I said last week might be a good thing, having a bit of pressure on Fultz. That he can't sit and expect just to be handed the keys to the starting position. He's got to really earn his minutes.
Dan, is there anyone for you?
You know, it's funny when you say that the question, you really break it down, because, you know, if you were to say it in terms of Magic fans, you know, the answer might be Evan Fournier, who you know, in terms of the coaching staff, he's proved himself, and, you know, he has a very defined role. But, you know, he gets a harsh rap if you read the comments on Twitter sometimes from fans. When, you know, I think if you put Evan Fournier on a different team and fans were watching him, they'd be like, you know, we could use a guy who does the things like Evan Fournier does. But it just becomes one of the things where I think at certain points in his career here, he's been asked to do a lot and carry a lot of the offensive load, because he was the only guy who could do it on the roster at times. So I think, you know, that gives him a bad rap. And, you know, I think there's a lot of things that he brings to an NBA team that if he weren't here, you would notice and fans would miss. You know, but with that being said, you know, he does have a very defined role, and I don't think, you know, he has necessarily those things to prove. I always look at the guys, when you really look at that question, like a Kareem Mane, you know, who's a guy who, you know, was fighting for his spot on the roster. And I did confirm for you guys, it is Mane. So I just shot out a text there to our PR guy just to confirm for you. That, you know, is fighting for his place in the league and proving that he could play at this level of competition. The guys at the bottom end of the roster are always really trying to prove, okay, I'm worthy of a spot, whether it be in a G League, and the fact that you gave me an Exhibit 10 contract, or you know, I may be on a two-way contract now, but I deserve to be, you know, have a full roster spot next season. So those guys are always fighting for it. And then you're going to have the two rookies this year, Chuma Okeke, who's going to try to prove that he was worthy of being selected where he was, even though he has a year off. And a guy like, you know, Cole Anthony, who's always eager to prove what he could do, and the fact that he should have been, I mean, in his own words, he feels like he was, you know, the top player in the draft. So, you know, that he was more valued than people gave him credit for. And I thought Mikey brought up a really great point when you talk about guys like Fultz and Bamba. This offseason was supposed to be huge for them in terms of work and development, and they get robbed a little bit of that by a shortened, truncated offseason. So it'll be interesting to see how much they were able to do in such a short, limited time. But again, you know, for these guys, playing time is valuable, and we'll hopefully continue to see steps of growth there along the way.
For me, it's Mo. I am going to go easy because both Mikey and Grant know that early on last season, I'm not going to say I was willing to give up on him, but had there been offers, I would most certainly have considered them. I am going to be fair and say his development has been stalled by injury, without any shadow of a doubt, and also some limited opportunity because of how dominant Vooch is in that position. What Nikola Vucevic does for our team is huge, and as such, whenever Mo comes in, he's almost battling. He's battling to get out of that shadow, and it's a difficult place to be. So I'm going to go easy on him, but for me, it's Mo, and I really hope he does make those steps because he's a nice guy. He's a nice guy and deserves the success. So Dan, can I just ask you a question now?
Yeah.
Obviously, we already mentioned that you joined the Magic in season 2008-2009, the final year. When you did Instagram Live for us back in May, you told a favorite win story, the semi-finals against the Celtics.
Yeah.
Our following has grown hugely since that time, and I'm just wondering if you'd tell the story again, because Magic fans are going to love that.
No, it was one of those things that whole run was magical, for lack of a better word, just because it was a little bit unexpected. You know, Jameer Nelson goes down. You struggle in the early round against Philadelphia. It's like, how far could this team go? And it just seemed that every round, the team gained so much more confidence in itself. And there became this belief that, oh, without a doubt, they went from the, the point in the Sixers series of, can we get out of the first round, to by the time that they were playing LeBron and the Cavaliers, that we're the best team in the league and they're going to have to, come through us, kind of mentality. So it was really interesting to watch that grow within the team over the course of that postseason. But without a doubt, I think a huge turning point in that postseason that gave this team the belief that they could win an NBA Finals came in that Game 7 in Boston. You talk about all the history there. And it's, I believe they were 32-0 at that point, in closing out a series up, whether it was 3-2 in a series and they had the final game at home over the course of their history. And, for the Magic to come in there and do it. And then for me, I sat down in that environment at my media seat, and there happened to be this, little chart there that said, Dan Savage, OrlandoMagic.com at my seat. And where they had us sitting was this makeshift table to accommodate all the extra media in the postseason. And it was right in between a row of fans. So there are fans in front, fans behind. And some Celtics fans saw right away that I was with the, Orlando Magic organization. And, it was prior to tip off and they were already riding me, saying, they were waving these towels and all this stuff, talking tons of smack. And, the Magic going into the fourth quarter, make that huge run. It seemed like Hito Turkoglu just had it going that night. And the Magic pull away and the fans started to vacate even before the final buzzer sounded, and had a nice little exchange with a fan, waved a towel at him that he had been waving at me all game, and had happened to leave on the floor. So, it was just a fun one being from Orlando. I try to look at the things unbiasedly, but, that one was a fun one for me. And then to go into the locker room afterward, Stan Van Gundy, I believe, had written on the whiteboard 32-1, and that one being the Magic victory that they had secured in Boston. And the energy in there, I think, after that Game 7 win against the Boston Celtics really set the tone for what they would do in that series against the Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Because what people forget in both games 1 and 2, they faced huge deficits. I think in Game 1 at one point, they were almost down 20 points against that Cavaliers team. And they just had this belief like, okay, we're down huge, like we're going to go on a run and come back. And I think it was the things that they did against Philadelphia and the Celtics that set that belief that regardless of who they're playing, what kind of deficit they were facing, they could come back and win games.
Is it right you still got the towel?
I do have the towel. It's funny. I'm going through a home construction reconstruction right now and remodeling, some things. And so I actually, up until, a few days ago, had the towel right over here, but it's boxed up right now with some other material. But yeah, I do have that towel. It's one of the few trinkets I have from my travels on the road.
It's a quality memento, my friend. Quality memento.
That's one I'll keep.
G, I know you wanted to ask Dan something.
Yeah, if we can't go to Orlando on vacation, I've been to a number of road games, New York, Brooklyn, Miami on the road. But seeing as you're a traveler who gets to go to many arenas, where would you recommend to a Magic fan to go for a road game?
Ooh, that's a tough question, because there are so many different things that I like about each city and the uniqueness that they bring. Two of the louder arenas that I've been through in my time were peak OKC. It felt like when you're going in there when they had, Russ and KD, that environment was just so loud and fans standing almost like a college atmosphere till that first bucket scored before they sit down. And, that could be a wild environment. I really liked Golden State, being at the Oracle. But their new environment, it feels a little bit like Amway Center. There's some elements to it that you feel a lot of these new arenas have certain Amway Center envelopments, and environments to them that they kind of took along the way. And, you know, that crowd, the luxury and experience of that new arena is something else. You said you had the Garden. For me, that's special. You know, I grew up in the New Jersey, New York City area. And so, you know, once or twice a year, I would get the opportunity to go to the Garden, sometimes for a New York Rangers hockey game, because I had a friend growing up who had season tickets, and then occasionally would get to go in for a Knicks game. And so for me, when I still go in there to cover a game and I'm on the floor, it's like a special moment for me personally. So if you've checked that box off, those are kind of interesting stadium ones. Then you bring in the food element, and that goes into the city, and that's kind of selfishly where my mind goes, and is like, what am I going to eat in that city? What am I going to drink in that city? And those are the things I really start thinking about. You know, some of the traveling party members that I've gone with over the years call me the travel planning committee, because I kind of map out a list of things we have to get in each city along the way. So there are people who just you know, as soon as we get to the hotel, put their bags down and they're like, all right, Dan, where are we going? What are we trying out here? What's the dinner plans for the night? So those are the things I really deep dive into. And so, you know, Portland's special in that way. Denver's special in that way. Phoenix has some interesting nightlife elements to it. So, I mean, to me, I could find something special for you to do in any city for 1 to 2 days. It's just, does the city have the long-term value to it, of whether you'd want to live there or not long-term? But yeah,
That's
I could
cool.
really
Thank
get into
you.
that question. I find nuggets in each city. So, you know, I value aspects of each one of them.
Cool. Thank you.
Mikey, anything for Dan?
Yeah, you were talking about earlier, you were sat down with assistant GM Matt Lloyd talking about Cole Anthony and the scouting process. How did that differ this year compared to years that have gone by?
No, that's a really good question. And, you know, you could maybe make the argument that's why the Magic had a little bit of an advantage getting a player like Cole Anthony, when maybe, you know, he would have gone perhaps earlier if it were different circumstances. With a guy like Cole, who's, you know, kind of coming off an injury, you want to be able to see all those elements in person, see the bursts. And normally you have a combine in Chicago where these guys can work out and prove themselves in front of everybody. And with a guy like Cole's background, I'm sure he would have worked out there and, you know, tried to use every element of his time to prove that he was the player he was prior to the injury, the guy who was so highly touted coming out of high school. The Magic had the opportunity to both watch him in person and meet with him, because he happened to be doing something down in Miami and they were able to take a drive down. Now, teams were only allowed to have a limited number of these in-person, you know, in meetings and workouts, compared to under normal circumstances where you'd have Chicago, you'd have guys flying in and out. You know, you guys have even seen some of the coverage we've done in OrlandoMagic.com over the years, where, you know, people always pull up the photos you see of like Trae Young in a Magic uniform and, you know, this guy, that guy over time, because they've come there, they've worked out, they've done media sessions. You know, none of that this year. So perhaps in a guy like Anthony's situation, which was a little bit unique, the Magic were able to see him, get their hands on him a little bit more, and be very assured of the type of player he was. You know, in addition to that, there's a lot of virtual elements, you know, both with the pause in the season and then, you know, with the restrictions afterwards. When the season paused, you know, the Magic were already starting to look at guys as potential free agents, guys that were going to be in the draft, and spend a deep dive on that because there was such a big break in between. So there was a lot of time to really analyze these guys, but it was done differently because it was over video.
Okay, cool. And obviously through COVID, sadly, the Magic have had to lay off quite a number of long-term staff. How hard was it to see somebody like John Denton and Dennis Newman, Joey go?
You know, it's a tough spot for me to be in because, you know, as the Magic organization doesn't comment on, you know, any departures or whatever, but, you know, all really great, people as you've mentioned, and those are guys I traveled a lot with. So for me, I'll just say that I've stayed in contact with all those guys. I text with them regularly, good friends of mine, and I'm sure that the future holds great things for all of them. And the Magic organization loved all of them too. So it's just very tough times for everybody in all facets and all elements of business and walks of life. So tough situation. Love all those guys like family.
Has the COVID, the epidemic, really impacted on the way you work?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you're talking about right now. I'd already, be in the building, seeing these guys come in for workouts. I would have seen draft workouts go on. I would have met all these guys. And, for me, now you're trying to establish relationships and coverage off of Zoom calls and, a lot of digital stuff. So it's a lot tougher, especially, when it comes to newer guys. When you're talking about guys that, like Aaron Gordon or, Vooch, who I've been around, for the longest time, I could easily, text or, hop on a call or Zoom with them, and they already know who I am. But, it's going to be tougher for, me to start to establish relationships with, guys like Cole Anthony or, somebody like Dwayne Bacon, who's, coming in for the first time, and start building those relationships, because now I'm just a little box during a Zoom call while they're perhaps talking to some other media, and maybe once every so often I'll get something individually with one of them. But the tough elements were like on draft night, I was kind of like in a COVID safe room, where people have certain access levels based on whether they've been tested or not. And, it gets real tricky. So whereas on a normal draft night, you're interacting with everybody, you're discussing the picks, who's left on the board, all this kind of stuff. And it was just kind of a little bit like isolating to be there kind of, by yourself or with a limited group of people versus what the normal experience is like. So, I cannot wait for things to get back to normal as much as anybody. Hopefully they could get this virus under control, save a lot of lives, most importantly, and then we could all get back to doing things the way doing the things we love, the way we love to do them.
Yeah. Now, for Garant's favorite part of any point of your thoughts, the trivia. Now, G, you've done one quiz already this week, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I was on NBA UK Fans. They did their weekly mastermind competition. So a minute on NBA general knowledge and then a minute and a half on a specialist subject. And I did all right. I got 13 out of 14. Orlando Magic player jersey numbers. So I got 13 out of 14. I was thrown by the question on the one I got wrong.
Having watched it, that was a badly worded question. I can see where you got that one wrong. It wasn't well worded. But that was an amazing performance, mate. It's such a mind and knowledge. It's ridiculous.
Thank you.
I dread this part every week when I'm on the other end of it. So, we're following on from Dan's 2009 Game 7 story. One that I'm sure you will fly through, G. So, everybody, the starting five for the Magic that night.
Game 7 against the Celtics?
Yeah.
Okay, are we taking this one at a time or what?
However you want, go for it. G, go on.
Right, hang on. Rafe Alston.
Yes.
Let's just get the big ones out of the way. Dwight Howard.
Yeah.
Rashard Lewis.
Yeah.
Hedo Turkoglu.
Yes, I've set myself up with this question, haven't
I? And I want to say it was JJ Redick.
5 for 5, my friend. 5 for 5. Well done. Okay.
Yeah, what people forget too is Courtney had the face thing he had to deal with over the course of the postseason there. So he was kind of limited a little bit, in terms of what he could do that postseason. So you had JJ Redick in there, and then the guy who was the ultimate sixth man in Mikel Petrus, who that postseason just seemed like every time he needed a big shot, he was coming through in the clutch.
Well,
and not to forget Marcin Gortat. So Dwight Howard got suspended for a game, didn't he? For throwing an elbow. And he came in and did a sterling job to fill in that role.
Okay. Well, you've named 3 of the guys who appeared from the bench there in that little conversation. So who were the other 2?
Tony Batty.
Yes.
Who else was there? Come on, Mikey.
Mate, you're taking the front stage here. You crack on, buddy.
You got Dad.
Who else was there?
Is a point guard you're missing.
Come on, G.
We got Rafe. And that was the year after we had Jay.
You're forgetting Anthony Johnson.
Anthony Johnson, yes, that's it.
Mikey's got him. Excellent stuff.
Well done.
Okay. Easy one, considering the performance that he put in on that night. Top points scored for Orlando on that night. Who got the top score?
Dwight Howard, was it?
No.
Was it not?
No.
Turkoglu.
Yeah. Can you remember how many he scored? Any of you?
No. I was blind drunk at this point.
I actually looked this up a little while ago. I want to say because I remember being like surprised that it was lower than what I had remembered. So I want to say it was like 19, but it felt like, what's that?
So close. It was 25.
It was points. Yeah, I remember it felt like 35. Like I remember feeling in the moment, like, so when I went and looked back at it, I was like, really, that's all he had? Because it felt like one of those games where he was just scoring everything. So then I undersold it in the second memory, but it felt like it was 35. So when I saw it was 25, I was like, I could have sworn he had more than that.
And also weighed in with 12 assists, which was the team top number of assists.
And in that fourth quarter, he was just unreal.
And so I'm going to ask you one now. Who had the most steals?
Who had the most steals? Oh, so that would be an interesting one, because you'd look at guys coming off the bench. MP was a bit of a risk taker, so I'm going to gamble and go with. Well, no, I'm going to go with Rafer Alston. I go with Rafer Alston.
What knowledge! Brilliant, mate. Absolutely spot on. Spot on. So and who was top points from the bench? Who scored the most points from the bench?
And then that's where I'm going to go with Petrus in that one. He was great that series, that whole playoff run. MP.
I'm going to get Dan on Mastermind, I think.
I'm impressed by this.
It was one of those. It's funny. I mean, because I deal with these like factoids all the time. The guy who's even got a better memory than me, because I have a pretty decent one for these things. Josh Cohen is like the human encyclopedia. It's so great when you're writing a story and you're sitting next to him, because I'll just be like, Josh, I remember we played the Pacers last season, and I really think that, so-and-so was our leading scorer. And he'll be like, yeah, he had, 19 in 32 minutes. And you're like, wow. He's like human basketball reference. So it almost makes you lazy, because you never have to look anything up. You just ask Josh Cohen. He just knows.
Geraint's our Welsh Josh Cohen then, aren't you?
But even in meetings, it's funny now. Like people will be, have a big marketing meeting. There'll be like 30 people on the call, and I feel bad for the pressure that started to be put on him, because there'll be like some random factoid like that comes up, and everybody will just be like, Josh on the Zoom call, and he's like expected to have the answer, and he does. So it's fantastic. Him, David Steele, their memories are just unreal when it comes to that stuff. I have a decent one, but I got to give the nod to those two guys. They're just otherworldly.
You mentioned David Steele, though. One of the things that we were so hugely impressed with was how good his commentary was from working from a TV feed, rather than being in the arena and able to see everything that was going off. Superb job in the playoffs and the bubble.
Yeah,
Really.
in the stuff those guys, David, Jeff, Dante, etc., don't get the credit for it is the amount of work that they put in the production, and from the start of the morning when they're going into their production meetings and bouncing around all these ideas to the time that they spend up looking up random facts and all the notes that they have and the details. I take it as like an immense accomplishment when I find a fact about a team and, one of them says, wow, I didn't see that or something like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, like found something that even these guys, because they're just deep diving, talking to people, doing everything to prepare for the games. That's why when you hear them, speak on the Fox Sports broadcast, there's, you can trust the information you're hearing. They put the work in.
Yeah. Guys, this has been brilliant. I've had some great fun tonight. Thank you very much. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. We genuinely appreciate the time that you've given us tonight.
I always appreciate it. I hope to see you guys soon. Hopefully all this we could start hang out again.
But you don't know how much we want that. Really, really, really. But thank you so much. Guys, look after yourselves and go Magic.